Hi friends and welcome back or to World and Bunny, a cozy space to talk about books. Today I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag, which is basically a tag that a lot of booktubers do around the middle of the year to assess what's been read, to assess what's coming up and that they're excited to read. And I just thought it's just such a fun tag, and I'll leave in the video description a list of the questions so you can answer in the comments below, because I'd love to hear your answers to this as well. So let's get into the question. First of all, if you can hear deep breathing or like heavy breathing, my asthma seems to just be heightening at the minute. I'm not quite sure what's going on with it. So sorry about my croaky throat and my heavy chest, but let's get into the question. So the first question is the best book that you've read so far this year. And I think I have to have multiple books for this. I've got three in mind. The first one was, of course, And Then There Were None. I'm really getting into Agatha Christie this year, as a lot of you know and have been following along with. And I read And Then There Were None for the very first time. I actually read the Figure It Out Yourself edition, which was quite a cool edition that's come out, in which at the end then you get an envelope in which it then has a letter from Scotland Yard basically explaining the case and what's going on. And it was just a really fun kind of like interactive version of Then There Were None, and I feel like it really added to my reading experience, which I was really grateful for. So I have to say that one. Then I'd also have to say Courting of Bristol Keats, mainly because that's a fantasy book that follows Fae, and also, if you didn't know, And Then There Were None is Agatha Christie, murder mystery. It's set on a remote island. I feel like a lot of people know it. It's one of her most popular works. And basically all of these people get invited to this island in this remote house. No one knows who's invited them. There's kind of like these obscure people that have invited them all, and then they get stranded on this island in this house, and murders begin to happen, and you're having to figure out who the murderer is because they're obviously on the island. So it's kind of like a forced proximity murder situation, and I won't say much more than that because I don't want to spoil it anymore. So sorry, jumping back to Courting of Bristol Keats. This is a fantasy book in which I feel like it's dubbed as fantasy romance. And the reason why this is a favourite of this year is because, so far, I feel like it's just so nostalgic for me. It just really reminded me of kind of like the earlier days of fae romance. It felt very simplistic. It had these kind of like shocking twist and turn elements in it. It had like a brooding romance. It had friendship. It had lessons in learning, it being swept up into this fae world that they weren't aware of. And it just felt really nostalgic for me, and I love reading nostalgic books quite often. So yeah, I really liked that one. And then also I'd have to say my other favorite was Six Scorched Roses. I loved that one by Carissa Broadbent because it was my first Carissa Broadbent that I read, and it was like, it's kind of a standalone. What I understand about these books is that they're done in sequels, like in duologies, and they all interweave kind of, because it's like this part of this bigger world. And I feel like this was like a 2.5 of a duology, so it could be read as a standalone, but then also you can experience the other characters throughout the rest of the series in one of the duologies. Yeah, I feel like I didn't explain that very well because it's quite complicated and I don't necessarily understand it. So Scorched Roses I really enjoyed because, again, it was a tiny little book. It was so fast paced. I loved it so much. I feel as though it was just something that it could just get me out of a reading slump. It had kind of like an academic woman in there, a vampire, a romance going on. I don't want to say too much because obviously I don't want to spoil the book because it is a little itty bitty book. But yeah, that is definitely another best book. I feel as though I could say so many books because I read so many good books this year, but I don't want to be here forever on this question. So the next question is the best sequel you've read, and that for me would have to be Confessions of a Bookseller. If you are new here, I've raved about this series. This is a series by Sean, I want to say his name is Bethel. I'm probably really not saying that right. I'm sorry. But this is a diary of a bookseller, and it's non-fiction, and it's literally what it says on the tin. And basically, Sean runs the bookshop. It's literally called the Bookshop in Scotland, Wigtown, and it's basically his diary of being a secondhand bookseller. There's 3 books in the series. I think there's Diary of a Bookseller, which is the first one, Confessions of a Bookseller, and then there's kind of like a little companion novel, which is like 7 types of people you find in a bookshop. And I devoured these, and it made me realize that I love diary books. Like, I just love that format, whether that be non-fiction or fiction. And it's kind of like sent me on this whole kind of like adventure of reading diary books. So I'm very grateful for that. But it also just felt like I was living vicariously through him, because it's like a dream of mine to own a bookshop and be a bookseller. So it felt quite fun to kind of like live through him and not have to actually deal myself with the trials and tribulations of it. And yeah, it made me just appreciate secondhand bookshops so much more than I already did, and like supporting kind of like pre-existing bookshops and independent bookshops like my library, and not supporting like big corporations like Amazon or Jeff Bezos or anything like that. And yeah, I just really, really loved it, and I highly recommend it if you like that kind of thing, or that sounds interesting to you. Then yeah, obviously read them in order, like in this case, because like you get to know the characters, and then the sequel is like a carry on from the first book. It's like the next year, I think. And you won't understand like who the characters are because they haven't been properly introduced. But I think if you picked up, you probably could just like figure it out. So the next question is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. So I'm awful at staying up to date on new releases, to be honest, and it's not till I like go into a bookshop, or I'm like looking for my next book to read online or on the library or something, and I spot a new release and I realize it's a new release. I don't ever really kind of like anticipate books, and if I do, I add them to my wish list, and then I just promptly forget about them. All of the books that I really want to read and on my wish list, I do have an Amazon wish list for, and I don't often buy them from Amazon. It's just the easiest place to be able to have a wish list and send it to people, and people view your wish list. So yeah, often I just add new releases onto there and then just promptly forget about them. But something that I am anticipating, which I think is like a new edition, so can kind of classify as a new release, are the Penguin Archive editions. They're like the white ones with the red writing, and they've released like a whole collection of them. I think it's for Penguin's 90th birthday, and there are some like definite like new releases on there that, well, like it's new releasing a new edition that I want to get to. Also, I spotted in Waterstones recently, but I didn't pick it up, was Second Chance Convenience Store. That's a translated fiction book, and it just sounds like the kind of quintessential cozy, comforting translation of fiction that I've been loving. And then my other anticipated release, which I actually bought yesterday at a independent bookshop, is The Lady of the Lake by Jean. She is a booktuber, and she that has a PhD in mythology and historical elements. I'm really awful at knowing exactly what. And yeah, this is sounding really interesting. I've been following kind of like her book journey on it, so I'm very, very, very excited to get to this one and read it. So yeah, I'd say that's my answer for those. Okay, so the next question is like a second part to that, I would say, and that's the most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And I actually do have an answer for this, despite me saying I don't follow releases. And that's the second book in the Courting for Bristol Keats series, because the first one ended on a cliffhanger, and I'm so eager to know and find out what happens in that book series. And then also the other book is Every Day I Read 53 Ways to Get Closer to Books. I love books about books. I love books about like non-fiction books, fiction books, etc. And yeah, it just makes me love being a reader and love reading like even more than I already do. And I spotted this book from a Korean YouTuber that I watch, and I saw that she was also reading it, and I spotted it, and obviously I was like looking online because to see if that it had been translated, and it's actually being translated later this year, so I'm very excited about that. So yeah, I'm very excited to have both of those releases happen, and yeah, that's my answer for that. So the biggest disappointment of the year, I hate kind of trashing books and like saying that books were a disappointment and things, because I feel like that's so unfair because it just didn't work for me. But if I have to answer this question, then I would say honestly, the Delegate Dream department store, I think is the right way of saying it. I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting from this. I think I was expecting more cozy translated fiction from this than what it was, but I just feel as though it didn't really have much substance, and I feel as though it was just, it felt very flat for me, and it felt very bland, and it, like, the whole concept was really imaginative and really unique and like nothing I've ever read before, and I feel like the characters could have been so much more than what they already were, but I just feel like I was just getting bored about midway through, and like at the end I was just kind of left with a bit of the old feeling, which is not nice to experience, because I was really looking forward to this book. So yeah, sadly it just didn't work for me. And then the other one, which might be a bit of a controversial opinion because I know it's been getting so much love and praise online, is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. I must say, I must caveat with, I did enjoy this book, but I feel like the ending and midway through, it became a bit samey for me, and it kind of like lost the edge of mystery and intrigue for me. I don't know whether that's because I just didn't read it at the right time or I was expecting something different from it. But yeah, I just felt like it became a bit samey for me. I just didn't end up really enjoying it that much. And yeah, it just felt a bit flat for me. So sadly, those were disappointments for me, but please don't let me put you off these books because I still feel as though if they fell into the right hands, they could be very much enjoyed. So next up is the biggest surprise that you've read, and that is You Are Here by David Nichols. I've wanted to read this book for such a long time because I am so drawn to the Lake District. I really want to go on holiday to the Lake District, and this was pitched as a romance in which it's like a walking romance, and these two people who are struggling immensely kind of get forced in the situation together where they're walking throughout the Lake District, and it's kind of a bit like their trials and tribulations and their relationship. And don't get me wrong, I feel as though I was left wanting more at the end of this, and I feel as though there were some moments in with the characters which I kind of just had to look past and kind of just had to ignore that had happened. But I feel like for what I wanted at that time, and just being the light-hearted read, the little romance flourishing, the walking, the scenery, the exploration around the people and the past traumas, I feel as though it just really worked and I just really enjoyed it. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was like amazing, but I would say it was quite a surprise because I didn't really know what to expect going into it, I suppose. Need a tea break. I'm currently drinking the matcha Twinings tea, super green matcha. It's so good. I don't actually like matcha. I've tried it a couple of times when I've been in London, and I just didn't really like it. But this tea, it tastes really good and it gets my energy going, which is exactly what I want. Delicious. So, anyway, back to the questions. So the next question is your new favourite author, and I feel as though this is such a self-explanatory answer if you have ever, or if you've been here this year on my channel, and that for me is Agatha Christie. I discovered her work this year, to be honest, if I'm just being vulnerable for a minute, has been a really difficult year for me health-wise. I've been really struggling. I've had a lot of issues going on, and Agatha Christie has been a safe sanctuary for me. I never really read any murder mystery or any crime or any thrillers before picking up or diving into the world of Agatha Christie, and there's just something so blissfully unique and cozy, but yet rooted in gripping mystery, getting you lost in the world that I just adore about Agatha Christie. I love kind of like the way it's set, the way the characters act. I just adore how clever she is in her mystery writing. Yeah, that kind of like golden age crime is really, really singing to me right now, and I am so thankful to have discovered Agatha Christie's work. Of course, my favourite at the moment is Miss Marple. I adore Miss Marple so, so very much. And yeah, I just absolutely love it. And yeah, so she would have to be a new favourite author of mine. And I've read quite a few of her books now this year. I want to say maybe around 20, or was that a bit ambitious? Maybe like 15 of her novels. So yeah, I absolutely adore Agatha Christie. So the next question is a book that made you cry. I don't really read books that make me cry. I tend to read books to escape to happiness, and quite often that was like my way of reading. I now have started picking up a lot of like literary fiction that is like raw and honest and vulnerable and has real characters and real life situations in it. So maybe my answer next year might change, but for the minute I have to say a non-fiction, which is I'm not lazy, I'm on energy saving mode. This reminded me so much of I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. So if you love that book, then I recommend this book. And this is basically just on about how depression can be so isolating and so debilitating, and it kind of just is such a vulnerable and open look at mental health and what it means to have a mental health condition and how you feel in that moment. And yeah, I cried because I just felt so seen, and it felt like just so validating, and so I highly recommend it if that sounds interesting to you. It's definitely feels like a comfort blanket, and it feels like a bit of a self-soothe read, so it's definitely a good one. And opposite to that is a book that made you happy, in which I have to say is Howl's Moving Castle. I read that for the That's Fiction book club, which is my book club that is currently on a break, but I launched it this year. And yeah, so I read it for a video for that, because I do a spoiler-filled vlog of the book club pick every single month. And this was the first time I had ever read Howl's Castle. I obviously watched the Studio Ghibli movie adaptation of it, and I feel like it just held like so much magic, and it's probably controversial for me to say it held so much more magic, but I feel like I just got like little snippets that possibly couldn't have been included in the movie because it would make for boring cinema, but little snippets that just worked in the book. And I don't know, it just felt so nostalgic even though I didn't watch it in childhood, and so comforting and just so warm and escapist. And yeah, I highly recommend it if you haven't read the book before. It's definitely a joy to read. Then we have the most beautiful book you've bought this year or received. Now for me, I'd have to say that's either the Sherlock Holmes box set edition that I recently received, or that I recently bought, sorry, or this Pride and Prejudice edition that I found from Oxfam while I was in Southampton for a hospital appointment last week. And yeah, I absolutely love both of these. I'm not really one for like beautiful editions. I wouldn't go out my way to buy a beautiful edition, but Pride and Prejudice, for example, is my favorite book of all time, I think. So I do love to collect editions of Pride and Prejudice. And then Sherlock Holmes is something that I've been wanting to get into for ages, and I found the box set on sale, and it's the Penguin cloth bound editions, in which I've been wanting to collect for such a long time. And so yeah, I was very excited to buy both of these items. So I'd say those are the most beautiful books that I've bought recently. The final question is books that you need to get to by the end of the year. So I don't have a set list. I just kind of like have a few on my shelves that I would really like to get to, and like on my TBR area. I've bought quite a lot of books recently, so I would say any one of those I'd be excited to get to and read. Yeah, I don't ever kind of like set a strict TBR for myself. I'd love to maybe finish all of the Miss Marple books for Agatha Christie, even though that makes me immensely sad. And yeah, I wouldn't say like I have like a set reading list. So that's probably my answer to that question. So there's all of the questions and my answers to the mid-year book freakout tag. As always, I'd love to hear your answers to some of these questions in the comments below. And thank you ever so much for joining me on this adventure today. If you've made it to the end, let's leave a calendar emoji to represent the middle of the year. And yeah, all I have left to say to you is I hope that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you have a wonderful day or night. Until next time, friends. Bye!